hopefully you've gotten feedback from your project management plan and made some modifications to your design for project 19. For project 21, you'll be doing a similar activity based on feedback from your project management plan. You'll be modifying a third iteration, version 3 of your prototype. The other thing we want to keep in mind too is just some other aspects we may not have thought of as well. So if the feedback you got isn't necessarily something that you think would be as helpful as possible, we're going to give you some other ways to modify your prototype. So some things to keep in mind is we are still working on problem solving and the engineering design process. We're looking at technical communications once again and project management. At this point, we are at the detailed design stage of our project prototype, and getting close to the end here. You'll notice we still have, even with the modified schedule, lecture 23 and 24 still to go. So I want to talk about detailed design and considerations, talk about your continued research and progress towards your verification plan. So one thing we want to look at is that even with the feedback you've been getting, there's other things and other perspectives we want you to look at. Perhaps safety is one of those, perhaps reliability or maintenance, aesthetics, but we're just going to go through manufacturing and assembly as an example here as far as one of the options you have for modifying your prototype. None of these really have to do with the design and purpose and user needs that you've looked at, which I think is something unique that you need to think about. So for instance, you'll see two parts here that both serve the same purpose. But if you notice, the one on the left has 25 parts to the assembly, where the one on the right, because we've been able to merge some of those, there's only 7. Well, with 7 parts, you can reduce assembly time by 84%, fabrication time by 71%, and the overall weight of the object by 46%. So this is a way to show that even once you have a final design, you can modify it to improve it for manufacturing and assembly, which is a perspective we've not looked at yet. We've been so focused on the user needs that we haven't looked at how to make this thing actually work. So one of the things we want to think about, of course, is always going back to the user needs. It's always been the most important thing. But talk about some of those trade-offs with the design. Look at updating the user needs and requirements tables is required, but then looking at some of those mock-ups and final sketches. The second part we want to look at are the fully assembled prototype. You're working on this. I know some of you, we talked about the modification for the CDR, that it doesn't have to be the fully exploded assembly, but for the final project you will need that as well. But we want to look at some of that documentation and how that all fits together. But at the end of the day, you'll once again receive additional feedback from the instructional team based on the second set of data, so to speak. We want you to focus on as well manufacturing and assembly of your prototype. How can you modify your prototype and how can you make it better so it's easier to manufacture and assemble, or even think about shipping and distribution and things like those other parts that go along with making a product that gets to people. It's not just about making the product, but making it so we can get it to people. So you should be having that, the drawing of the new revised version 3 of your prototype. Explain that revision, explain changes, etc. And try to focus a little bit too, not only just on the feedback we give you, but think about manufacturing and assembly of your prototype to make it better. Thank you.